Salam Sejahtera Malaysia. Welcome to the third episode of the Healthy Rojak Show. We have got a very interesting topic today, and we're going to discuss it with Dr. Vani, who's with us, and Dishan, my co-host.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, Dr. Vani, again for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been seeing the episodes, you have realized that we have actually shot this episode from the previous one, which was colic, and we want to talk to Dr. Vani about today's episode, which is breastfeeding. Yeah, so Dr. Vani, maybe a bit of intro on breastfeeding and why the need. Why is it very important? Why is breastfeeding so important?
Okay. I think we've all heard a lot about breastfeeding in the past. Okay, it's something that has recently been highlighted. Why breastfeeding? That's a good question. So, the World Health Organization recommends that a baby is given exclusive breastfeeding for a period of 6 months. This is because breastfeeding contains a lot of useful nutrients. They've got antibodies, they've got the sufficient amount of water that's needed. And recently there's been studies that's been showing that breastfeeding has got a type of sugar called human milk oligosaccharides. So these are oligosaccharides that are not digestible by the baby. So you may ask, like, why are we giving milk that's not
Digestible,
the baby can't
yeah.
digest? Because actually this is meant for the gut bacteria to digest, and in turn this healthy gut bacteria then regulates the baby's immune responses. So these are long-term benefits that are present in breast milk. Apart from what's contained within breast milk also helps bonding between babies and families and the mother, also helps with the mother's mental health, reduces the risk of postpartum depressions in mothers. So these are some of the very few advantages of breastfeeding and why we're recommending breastfeeding.
Okay. What is your thoughts on this whole conversation on breastfeeding and formula and what mums go through? We know all of us are parents, and we see that this is innate pressure on mothers to actually breastfeed kids, and but what about mothers who can't do that and they have health problems due to circumstances?
Yeah.
My wife didn't have enough of milk, and then we had to shift to formula. So what are your thoughts on that discussion?
I think what's most important, the audiences or the listeners have to understand is mothers who give formula are not any lesser to mothers who breastfeed. We do not want to reduce any parent's effort. Okay, everyone's trying their best for their baby. For many reasons, some women may not be able to breastfeed. Like you rightly said earlier, some will have low supply. Some may have some physical, issues they might face that they're unable to breastfeed. Some due to social concerns, they won't be able to breastfeed. But we do not want to reduce anyone down. So whether you are giving formula, you are giving exclusive breast milk, or if you are even partially feeding, partial formula, partial breastfeed, do what's best for your baby. But we are here to focus how we can help mothers breastfeed, because a lot of times parents give up breastfeeding not because they can't, but because they don't have enough support. They know that they want to breastfeed, but they have these challenges where they don't know how to overcome it. So that's where today's conversation will come into.
Okay, let's talk about that challenges that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So, firstly, within the postpartum period itself, some of the breastfeeding challenges the mother may face, we'll break it down into a few things. First is physical. Okay, physical challenges. So these are like she may have a nipple inversion or flat nipple, where she's unable to feed the baby effectively. So nipple issues, she may have nipple crack, nipple bleeding issues, pain issues, engorgement, where it interferes with the breastfeeding. Thirdly, low supply. Like you said earlier, some mothers have low supply. That may interfere with breastfeeding. So these are some physical challenges. Then you have the emotional challenges, where she is just really, really tired, or she's going through depression, and breastfeeding can be quite tiring in the initial phase. So she finds it hard to breastfeed the baby. Third, recently, COVID has been a huge barrier. Some mothers during delivery have COVID. So what has happened is that they get separated from their infant in the hospital setting. So they are told not to breastfeed their infant if they have COVID. But we have new evidences now, and the World Health Organization does recommend mothers to continue breastfeeding during COVID. You can wear your mask, do proper hand hygiene, and breastfeed. but a lot of mothers get separated from their infants. The infants may have certain complications, they're born prematurely, or they have to be in ICU for certain reason, so they can't establish the breastfeeding. The baby might have issues like tongue tie. A lot of babies have tongue tie and they can't latch on properly and they have latch issues.
What is tongue tie?
Oh, we'll come to that. I have
Okay.
tongue tie myself. So
Okay.
it's where the frenulum of the tongue is actually connected to the lower palate of the mouth. So
Oh.
they actually can't latch properly. So if they have latching issues and tongue tie, you can do pretty much a tongue tie release. But some babies still thrive with tongue tie. So you can speak to your pediatrician and see if the baby needs a release so that they can latch properly. So there's baby issues. And then there are societal issues where they come back home and they feel like they don't feel comfortable to feed. There may be about 10 people in front of them, and they feel like, okay, I can't breastfeed my child in private if they have that privacy issue. So these are some of the challenges that mothers go through.
I believe that when we were breastfeeding our son, my wife was there were this kind of things, where it's probably the place or feeling uncomfortable. There are times where she's too tired, but the baby is crying, and I guess that's where as a father, as a husband, we have a role to play. I believe also.
Yeah, definitely.
But more than that, I think being there and being supportive is the key.
Yeah.
Breastfeeding.
I think for mums right now, you were talking about all the challenges and everything. There's also something else to add on in where when they have to go back to work. I think that's a huge thing for a lot of mothers to go through, because you have to be a productive person at work, and then when you come back home, I think a lot of mothers feel like they're just a milk cow who's just pumping out milk. That's
Yes.
the only purpose that they serve. But it's not that.
Yeah.
But that's a very dangerous mindset. To have as young mums. So, what are your thoughts on that, Doctor?
Okay. I think firstly, I wanted to say here is that earlier when we spoke about why breastfeeding, another main thing is that, so breastfeeding does not just bring health benefits, right? It's actually a socio-economic issue. So, they ask, how is breastfeeding not a health issue? And it's a socio-economic issue. If you look at it, it affects us largely as a society, not just from an individual mother and baby point of view. It affects how a family unit functions. And we can tell a lot from how a society functions based on how they support a breastfeeding mother. Breast milk is free. Breast milk is clean. Formula these days are expensive. This is another reason we can encourage, especially lower to middle class mothers, why they can sort of switch to breast milk to help save some costs. So economically it has impact, socially it has impact, and this is where the working mothers equation comes in. How we as a society, how workplace functions or supports working mothers breastfeeding, how in public setting people support breastfeeding. So how many workplaces that we know actually has a breastfeeding room for mothers? How many public places we go to has a clean breastfeeding room? Some of the challenges that me personally as a breastfeeding mother and my friends had was when we are out and about, many of my friends had to pump or feed their babies in toilets. So is that hygienic? Is this what we want as a society for our mothers and babies to experience? It should be in a nice, clean, happy environment. How many malls we go to actually have breastfeeding rooms? So I was very impressed when I had my baby and I was walking through Isoton. So they had a very, very lovely breastfeeding room where you can actually wash your pump items. They have hot water there. They have a proper sink and soap there and a very clean space. And during this COVID time especially, it's very important that we provide these clean spaces. So public spaces, work spaces, how many offices do have breastfeeding rooms? Or, we have women in sales departments traveling miles, and these women have to pump. Where do they pump? They pump in their car. Where do they store their breast milk when they're at work? Do we have refrigerators that are clean, or we're putting them in with old sandwiches? So, these are some of the questions that we as a society have to think about. And some of the challenges.
I think that the part of cleanliness, I think, is important. I think that comes from awareness and education from the ground up. Because if that is then set, then everything else will become better. And if mothers are going to be, pumping or feeding the child in public spaces, we should give cleanliness a very important role. I think that's very important.
Yeah. For me, public spaces is very important. And it's a challenge as a young parent and you have a newborn and you want to go out. You have to kind of research. Does this mall have a clean baby room? Or does this one? And there is a lot of limitations in that sense. But there should not be limitations. We should be able to go wherever we want and have the facilities provided for us. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. So I completely agree with you where there needs to be... I've been in baby changing rooms where it's filthy. And I'm like, how do people use the changing room? So there's not enough maintenance. There's not enough facilities. I completely agree with you. But also there needs to be a need for officers and society to support breastfeeding mothers and new parents. And I think that breastfeeding has become a thing that, I don't want to see, we don't want to show, let's put them in a corner somewhere. But that's the essence of life. You're giving sustenance to keep another human being alive. And that shouldn't be so much of stigma attached to it.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, your thoughts on that?
So it is national.
Sorry, I get very emotional talking about
It is an emotional topic, but it's a very important topic, especially now. You are right. How do we? We just had Malaysia Day. And when we go to Malaysia, I think Dishan spoke about what it means to be Malaysian. Okay. And as a nation, we should be nurturing our children. This is nature and nurture we are talking about very in very simple terms. So as a nation, what do we stand for? What do we want for our children? How do we want them to grow? So these are questions that we have to ask our larger selves. And earlier Dishan asked me, how can dads, where are dads in this equation, in this breastfeeding? I always felt like when it comes to feeding and babies and mothers, everyone just like, okay, that's a mother's problem. Okay, you go and feed, you go and take care. It's not my problem, right? No, but when it comes to breastfeeding or even formula feeding, any sort of feeding, it is a joint effort. It's a family affair. They say it takes a village to raise a baby. They didn't, and I used to think last time, they say it takes a village. When's the village going to come and see me? Help me? But this is when a village, this is where the village fits in. It's not just the mother and the baby when it comes to feeding. It's actually the father being involved, the grandmother, the grandfather, the aunties and the uncles. So in my personal experience with breastfeeding, I just normalized it at home. I didn't even give anybody opportunity to normalize themselves. I just sat in the middle of the lounge and I'm like, okay, I'm breastfeeding. Obviously, there are breastfeeding covers and all available now quite freely. There are many ways to do it in a way where everyone else feels comfortable as well. But I think everyone was like, okay, cool, she's breastfeeding, it's fine. I think that perception needs to kick in. In many houses, women do confinement in the in-laws' places or sometimes even in a friend's house where, they need support, then they have all the strangers or when it's with your in-laws, some people are not comfortable. And then the in-law can say, why are you breastfeeding in the lounge? You go to a room and you breastfeed, right? This is the mentality and perception that we have to change.
I mean, it's very interesting you talked about role of husbands and in this breastfeeding thing because the very old perception is it's a mom's job, but actually husbands can actually do a lot. And in my own experience, I always try to give support and always try, but as dads, we kind of we are lost a bit.
How to help?
What am I supposed to do?
I think what I learned was my personal lesson was that just being there. Just being there. Of course, you can't do anything, but it was a journey. I mean, you have to learn that you just needed to be there and zip it. Sometimes we come up with all these ideas because we are men. We're trying to
problem
solving everything, right? So we're trying to, we want to feed in the car. Okay, now I've got to think about where to park and how to do this, But actually, what we had to do was just be there, be present, and I think that would make a difference. Of course, everybody learns at a different pace, but eventually we learn how, and that was my personal experience.
So some ways dads can help, especially to ensure your breastfeeding journey is successful. So you might ask, what is a successful breastfeeding journey? Is it 6 months? Is it 1 year of breastfeeding? Is it 12 months of 2 years of breastfeeding? For me, it's as long as you try, it's a success story. You know, there's no sort of measure to it. When is a success story? If you are able to exclusively breastfeed for 6 months, that's fantastic. But at least if you try, then that's great as well. How can dads help? So I think the journey starts from even before the baby is born. The preparation journey starts there. So attending a breastfeeding course, for example, you know, sitting down with your wife during the breastfeeding course. So I made my husband sit through a very painful 8-hour breastfeeding course with me. But that actually helped set the right tone and set the right pace. So he was kind of, in some ways, at least emotionally prepared, even if he didn't know which way to help me. He knew a few things, like when during the postpartum period, he could tell me, hey, actually, the course mentioned this. You could get this.
Getting that information actually helps.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's one, preparing the father, involving the father early. If a father is not in the picture and somebody else, let's say the grandmother is going to be the main character, then get the grandmother to attend the breastfeeding course with you. Then they would understand, why should I not give water? Why should I, why is breast milk, how do we manage certain complications? So get those carers prepared early on, attend breastfeeding courses, many courses online now. If you can't afford, you can't pay for it, then YouTube, there are many free courses, many free podcasts on that. Once that's done, preparing for that phase of breastfeeding itself. So getting your nipple bumps ready in the early phase of breastfeeding, getting your pumps ready, getting your bottles ready, having this prepared really helps, okay? And the most important thing during the first few days of postpartum, ask your nurses, ask your lactation consultant, am I latching the baby properly? Because a lot of the times it's just technique that's wrong. How you place your head, or how you're placing the baby's head, or how you're trying to feed the baby. So simple things make a big difference. So speak to a lactation consultant early. There are many Facebook groups that you can go into, verified groups, many lactation consultants that you can now do video call. So speak to lactation consultants, And then once this phase is done, then comes the pumping. So breastfeeding and pumping is two separate things, two separate worlds. That's a different, I think 4 or 5 episodes of podcast altogether, right?
Right.
But where dads fit into this picture? Apart from encouraging and being there, you can help the mother clean the pumps, wash the pumps, sterilize them. This takes a good 2 to 3 hours. Let's say she's feeding, she's rested the baby. At night, especially 3 in the morning, you can just tell her, hey, look, I'll wash the pump for you, I'll sterilize the pump for you. So these things make a difference as well. Making sure there's a safe space for her. So you said, you had to park your car, you wondered where to park your car, your wife's going to, just things, figuring out little things like that. And when things go south or things are not working, just telling her, babe, it's okay. It's all right. If you have to switch to formula, it's fine. Don't stress yourself out. Dishan said that earlier. Why do we want to stress? Why are you stressing yourself out? Listen to the professionals, it's fine, right? So that is the support a mother needs from her part.
Yeah, and also dads need to understand that when women are breastfeeding, they are hormonal. So be ready to kena marah and be ready for a lot of emotion.
But to be very honest, right, the postpartum period, I think you guys are hormonal as well, equally as hormonal.
Yeah, we are learning, right? So we're trying to adapt into a totally new.
Yeah, men and emotions have a very complicated relationship. So when we have a lot of emotion and it's a very vulnerable situation for both sides, it becomes it's a good learning experience if you have the right mentality. And again, you need to be chill because it's going to be a lot on the mom to kind of figure out everything.
Is to be chill.
That's
the work that we need to do. The work is to find that ability to balance yourself and in our previous conversation we had about taking 2 steps back and looking at the situation. That needs to be done. But obviously it's not going to be done overnight. It comes with you going through that journey.
Yeah.
But I also feel as dads, right, how do you bond? Because how do you bond with the baby? Because the mother carries the baby. She can feel the baby's kicks, she carries the baby, and after 9 months she delivers the baby, and then she breastfeeds the baby, she's attached to the baby, right? So it's like, how do you guys, where do you guys bond? Where is that opportunity to bond? So these are the little opportunities you should take to bond with the baby. You're like, I'm involved in the feeding process. Although you can't physically breastfeed, this is how you get involved in that process.
What I did, I used to burp the baby. That's my role to feed. I will burp the baby. And when the baby burps, sense of achievement, So things like you find wins, small wins, make you feel better, make you feel, okay, I've made a difference in the baby and taking care. And also, like you said, cleaning up after, washing the bottles, and just taking care of her. And
Just another tip, lah. I mean, if you know your wife is carrying now, have that conversation with the child. I know the child is, you know, the mom feels the kicks, but he hears your voice. He or she hears your voice. So your voice is heard. The mother's heartbeat is heard. So that's the difference. So when you sing a song when the baby is born, he or she is going to respond to that.
Yeah.
You know?
So
that's something I learned.
And I think as much as some dads want to be involved, but they don't get that space from mothers as well. So this is where mothers have to give dads that opportunity to bond with the child. Little things like taking the dads for their ultrasound appointment, letting the dad see the baby, to
hearing
the
that heartbeat for the
hearing
first
the
time.
heartbeat.
Oh my God,
I
yeah.
still remember.
As much as it sounds like a cliche, these are the little things that actually create that bonding between fathers and babies.
Yeah, oh, that's true. Maybe, Doctor, we can go through on what dads can do very quickly to help mums and to give that support during breastfeeding time.
So firstly, get involved in the whole process. Start learning together. It's a process that's, you're doing it together. So attend courses on it. Help figure out what support you may need for successful breastfeeding. So that's equipments, what personnel help you will need, lactation consultants or any elderly friends who have successfully breastfed. Ask them for regular advices, and also just be there throughout the whole journey with the mother.
All right. Maybe, do you have any stories you want to share about how was the breastfeeding journey for you? For Edwin, let's put Edwin on the spot.
I mean, it wasn't easy. I mean, of course, there was the 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning stuff where sometimes I'm too tired, I've slept off, and my wife had to feed the baby. So, but over time, it was something that I had to learn as well. I had to know that, all right, she needs the break, I need to step in. The other thing, like I said earlier, find that space to, for her to breastfeed in peace, because they need to feel calm and collect in order that the flow is right. Right. So everything needs to be right, and sometimes that can overwhelm the father to find that right space. But we are all learning. No one is perfect, but there's beauty in imperfection. So we learn in that journey. So my thought would be to speak to your wife, speak to the mother, to speak and find out what makes her feel that peace that she needs in order that the baby is fed, because it's very, very, very important how the mother feels as she feeds the child. That's my lesson.
For me, it was when my wife started to breastfeed, and after my first son was born, we went to a confinement center, and there we got a lot of support from that because we had professionals there and things like that. And my wife, when she was giving milk and she was breastfeeding, after a while we realized that it was not enough, because our son kept crying even after she feeds, and then she started pumping and it was not enough milk. So there was a lot of pressure put on her, and I think that even made it worse because it was the first time, and she was like, I want to fully breastfeed. That was her stance when she was pregnant, and when we wanted to, we had to talk about it. But then at that time when she couldn't do it, there was a lot of negative feelings and negative emotions. So I think mothers, you kind of need to realize that even though you want to do something, and if it doesn't really work out, you kind of need to go to the next best thing. So the only conversation I had with her is like, why are you stressing yourself so much? End of the day, we need to feed, and we need to make sure that our son has enough so that he can grow well and develop well. So we started on formula. And then you can see this huge burden just lift off her shoulders. And she was just so much more chill and so much more relaxed. And I think that is something that also parents, husband and wife, need to sit down and have a discussion. If you can't breastfeed, what is the mentality that we need to do? And what is the things that we need to do right in order for us to be able to kind of feed the child? That's the basic thing you have to do. And like you said, the emotional thing, the emotional stance that a mother needs to have is very important. Doctor.
That's right. So I totally agree with Dishan. Sometimes we get too carried away with what's the best thing for the child. We forget about what's the best thing for the mother and the parents in the situation. So it's always good to, have a look at the overall picture and do what's best for your whole family unit. Yeah. But the key is, again, support, getting the right people to help you through. Breastfeeding is going to be challenging. It's not easy. So there is going to be it'll be once you think you've got this right, and then there'll be the next set of challenges. So getting a support group together, speaking to friends who've been breastfeeding or successfully breastfed, getting a lactation consultant on board, again having good doctors around you who you can reach out to and ask question any moment. So these are your tools that's going to really help with the breastfeeding journey. For me, my personal story, it's so much a story to share, but
not enough time, guys.
But the one key thing that I think I want to talk, mainly because we were talking about the whole societal outlook, right? A beautiful thing that I took away from my journey was my husband has his own company where he employs about 30 staff, and about 80% of them are women. He's entire, he's very proud about it that 89% of his employees are women. And when we had our baby and when we were going through our breastfeeding journey, one day he just sat down and he said, Vani, only now I realize how unsupportive my office space is for breastfeeding mothers, what my employees have gone through. Only now, after seeing the struggles that we go through, I've realized what I need to do in order to make sure my employees are well set up for their breastfeeding journey. So now he's created a breastfeeding room in his office.
Wow,
and he's actually supporting recently, although one of his staff went through a postpartum journey, and he made sure that she had the space to make sure that her child breastfeeding journey is supported, so she gets flexible working hours, etc., and she get a safe space to make sure her breastfeeding journey is comfortable. So that was very nice for me to see, because the breastfeeding journey did not just have impact on our family unit, but it's actually had a larger impact, and he's now taken it to his workplace and created this safe workplace. So I hope many more husbands can do this, many more husbands can do this. Many more workplaces can be supportive towards their employees in terms of their breastfeeding journey.
Okay, all right. Maybe we can finish off with just our own personal thoughts on, you were talking about how a dad can actually take that experience and make his own workplace better. In society right now, we are seeing, like we were talking about it earlier, Doctor, you were saying there's this negative perception on breastfeeding and there's not enough facilities and support out there. What are your thoughts on how we can actually change that mindset? We'll just go around the table. Maybe Edwin, you can start first.
I think the mindset, like what Dr. Vani said, starts at home. I think anything to change starts at home, and family being the nucleus of the community. I think when the family mindset changes, the community in effect will change. And what happened with Dr. Vani's husband's awareness was taken to the workplace. So I think more awareness needs to be out. We need to speak about this topic more. We need to speak and bring to awareness what a mother is going through in the first 6 months, first 1 year.
Yeah.
Depending on the type of pregnancy the mother had. And all these factors would then help us to be more adaptable and sustainable for the mother at home, in the community, and the workplace. So we need to keep this conversation going. We need to get more fathers involved, I think, into the conversation. Hopefully, if there's any fathers out there who'd be interested to have this conversation with us, we're open.
Yeah.
I think that needs to happen. And I believe Malaysia is getting there. We have started. Of course, change is constant, but we change for the better.
Yeah.
And that's my hope for where we're going to go in the future.
Doctor?
For me, I just wanted to share a very nice meme that went viral. People like memes, people like viral things. So there's this post where a mother is breastfeeding in public with a cover, and a guy comes up to her and says, "Oh, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Cover yourself," And she takes a piece of cloth and put it right over her face, and she covers herself while she's openly breastfeeding the baby. So, this is where I think we need a paradigm shift. It is, like you said rightly, it's in the mindset of people. We need to normalize it. This is normal. This is, as a society, we should just take a stand and say, nope, we are supporting breastfeeding. It is absolutely fine for a mother to breastfeed in public. She should not have to cover her face or cover herself, and it's normal. And we should be conscious about how we are judged as a society. Forget about judging women. How we are judging how we are judged as a society. So if we can nurture our baby, nurture our mothers, then it says a lot about our society. And I hope Malaysia one day, you can walk for a breastfeeding mother. She can just go to public breastfeed, her baby without feeling judged, without feeling uncomfortable, in a safe, hygienic space.
Yeah.
Then that's a major win.
All right. So thank you so much, Dr. Vani. Edwin, final thoughts, and we actually have our final thoughts. So we would like to thank Dr. Vani for coming all the way and having this wonderful conversation. We need to have more conversations on breastfeeding and also the roles of fathers. So if there's any fathers who want to come on the show, please reach out to us. You can sit down and have a very nice perspective on dads and what dads go through and things like that. I think that's very important as well. So thank you so much, Dr. Vani.
Thank you
Edwin,
for having me.
Thank you so much for having me as your co-host. Please follow us on all our social media platforms. This has been the Healthy Roja podcast. Thank you and bye.
Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.